I want you to picture something with me. A man steps off a combine at the end of a long October day. His back hurts, his boots are caked. He has been running that machine since sunrise, and the field still is not finished. He drives home in the dark, eats whatever his wife saved on the stove, sits down in the recliner, and falls asleep with the news still on. Sunday morning he gets up, puts on a clean shirt, drives to church, sings the songs, listens to the sermon, drops a check in the plate, drives home. And if you asked him, really asked him, looking him dead in the eye, "Do you delight in the Lord your God?" he would not know what to do with the question. That is not a failure of effort. That man works harder than most of us ever will. That is a failure of fuel. And the book we are reviewing today, the second volume of the collected works of John Piper, is the book that names the problem and hands him a different tank to run on. Welcome back to Truth in Pursuit. Today we are pulling a volume off the shelf that I genuinely believe could rewire your walk with Christ. A few episodes back, we talked about Volume 1 of Piper's collected works. That volume was the academic bedrock, with the justification of God, his exegesis of Romans 9. Heavy, foundational. The kind of book you read with 3 other books open beside it. Volume 2 is a different animal entirely. Volume 2 is the spark nearly all Christians need in their lives today. Inside the single binding sit 2 of the most important books written in the last 50 years, Desiring God and The Pleasures of God. If you have read anything by John Piper, it was probably one of these 2. And if you have not read either one, my hope by the end of these 15 minutes is that you will not be able to get to bed tonight without ordering a copy. Now let me tell you why this volume matters, especially for us today. Most of the believers I sit across from in the coffee shop, or the counter, or in a hospital room, are not struggling because they don't believe the gospel. They are struggling because they are exhausted by it. They have been handed a Christianity that feels like a second job. Get up earlier, read more chapters, pray harder, show up, serve, share, repeat. And then on Sunday morning, drag whatever is left of you into a pew and try to feel something. That is not Christianity. That is spiritual multi-level marketing at best. Piper diagnoses that exhaustion in the very first pages of Desiring God, and what he says is so radical, so counterintuitive, that the first time you hear it, you will think he must be wrong. Here's the sentence. Burn it in. God is most glorified in us when we are most satisfied in him. Stop the truck for a second. Read it again. God is most glorified in us when we are most satisfied in him. That is not a slogan. That is a load-bearing wall. Pull that wall out, and the whole house of empty duty collapses. Which is exactly what Piper wants it to do. Piper calls this Christian hedonism. Now I know the moment a Baptist pastor in southern Ohio uses the word hedonism, somebody in the truck just spit out their coffee. Stay with me. He is using the word on purpose, and he is using it precisely. Hedonism, in the philosophical sense, is the pursuit of pleasure as the highest good. Most of us have been taught incorrectly that worldly hedonism is a dead end. The man who chases pleasure in the bottle, in the bedroom, in the bank account, ends up empty. Ecclesiastes already wrote that book 3,000 years ago. Vanity of vanities. But Piper asks a question that most of us were never given permission to ask. What if the problem with worldly hedonism is not that it pursues pleasure too much, but that it pursues pleasure too little? What if the pleasures of this world are too weak, too thin, too temporary to satisfy a soul that was built for the weight of glory? C.S. Lewis said it first, and Piper builds his entire ministry on the foundation. Lewis said we are like children making mud pies in a slum because we cannot imagine what is meant by a holiday at the sea. We are not too desirous. We are not desirous enough. The Greek New Testament has a word for the kind of joy Piper is talking about. Agaliasis. It is not a calm, polite smile. It is a leaping, exultant, dancing gladness. It is the word Mary uses in the Magnificat. My spirit has rejoiced in God my Savior. It is the word Peter uses when he tells suffering believers they rejoice with a joy inexpressible and full of glory. That is not the joy of a man punching a spiritual time clock. That is the joy of a man who has struck oil in his own backyard. And here is where the doctrine bites. Piper is not saying joy is a nice add-on to the Christian life. He is saying joy is the engine. He is saying that a Christianity without delight in God is not a humbler Christianity, it is a broken Christianity. Because the God of the Bible is not flattered by your grim, white-knuckled obedience. He is glorified by your delight. Think about it like this. If I came home tonight and my wife asked me, "Do you love me?" And I said, "Honey, I am here, am I not? I'm doing my duty. I'm fulfilling my obligation as a husband. I have not honored her. I have insulted her." God is not honored when we obey him as a chore. He is honored when we obey him as a treasure. So Volume 2 holds two books, and they function like the two pistons of the same engine. You need both for the motor to run. The first book is Desiring God. Desiring God is the book that wrestles with us. It takes our side of the equation, the human heart, the human will, the human struggle to actually feel what we know we are supposed to feel, and works it through 10 chapters of dense, pastoral, carefully argued exposition. Piper deals with worship. He deals with prayer. He deals with money. He deals with marriage. He deals with suffering. He deals with missions. And in every single chapter, he is asking the same question from a new angle. What does it look like when delight in God is the engine, instead of duty? If you have ever sat through a worship service and gone through the motions and walked out the door knowing in your bones that something was missing, Desiring God is the book that names what was missing. You were not failing at duty, you were failing at delight. And Piper, with the patience of a master mechanic, walks you through the whole engine and shows you which line is clogged. The second book is The Pleasures of God, and this one, I'll be honest with you, this one is the deeper of the two. Desiring God asks what you should enjoy. The Pleasures of God asks a question most of us never thought to ask. What does God himself enjoy? What does the Almighty take pleasure in? What makes the eternal, self-sufficient, triune God of the universe happy? Piper walks through the answers one by one, and they are stunning. God delights in his Son. God delights in all that he does. God delights in his creation. God delights in election. God delights in concealing things and in revealing things. God delights in personal obedience and faith. God delights in showing mercy to broken pots. Do you see what he's doing? He is showing you that before God ever commanded you to be happy in him, God has eternally been happy in himself. The Father has been delighting in the Son from before the foundation of the world. The Son has been delighting in the Father. The Spirit has been the bond of that delight. And when you see how happy God is in being God, the permission slip is finally signed. You are allowed to be happy in him. More than allowed, you are commanded. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again I will say, rejoice. Philippians 4:4. The first book wrestles with the listener. The second book stares straight at the throne. Now, some of you have been walking with us through Romans 9, 10, and 11, the Potter's Workshop. And I want to make sure you hear this clearly, because some folks get nervous when a pastor starts talking about joy. Christian hedonism is not a retreat from sovereignty. Christian hedonism is the fruit of sovereignty. Think about it. The reason you can rest in your salvation is because the potter chose the clay. The reason you can have unshakable joy is because your standing before God is not anchored in your performance, but in his decree. The vessels of mercy are not vessels of anxiety. They are vessels prepared for glory. Sovereignty and joy are not in tension. They are the two rails the gospel runs on. If you take sovereignty without joy, you get a cold courtroom Christianity that produces frozen chosen, orthodox, correct, and emotionally dead. If you take joy without sovereignty, you get a frothy, sentimental Christianity that produces happy, clappy people who fall apart the first time real suffering walks through the door. Piper gives you both rails. That is why this volume matters. That is why it belongs on every shelf of every believer. And listen, I want to say something pastoral here, because I know some of you are listening from a hospital parking lot, or from a kitchen table the morning after a hard conversation, or from the cab of a truck 300 miles from home. Christian hedonism does not mean you have to feel happy all the time. Piper is very careful about this, and I want to be careful too. The joy he is talking about is not a constant emotional buzz. It is a deep, weighted, treasure-in-the-field gladness that holds underneath the sorrow. It is the joy Paul writes about when he says, sorrowful, yet always rejoicing in 2 Corinthians chapter 6. It is the joy of a man whose field is currently flooded but who knows the deed is in the safe. That joy survives cancer. That joy survives the funeral. That joy survives the layoff, because that joy is not anchored in the circumstance. It is anchored in the unchanging delight of an eternal God who has set his love on you. So here's the verdict. This is for sure a pastor's pick. Shelf rating, the blueprint. This is not a devotional you sip on a Tuesday morning and forget by Wednesday. This is a rewiring of the whole electrical system. If your walk with Christ has felt like a paint-by-numbers obligation, this volume will hand you the match. Now, Monday morning action plan. 3 things before the sun goes down next Sunday. Number 1. Read the introduction to Desiring God twice. Once with a pen in your hand, once on your knees. The introduction alone is worth the price of the volume. Piper lays out the whole system in about 20 pages. Number 2. Find one duty you have been performing on fumes. Family devotions, Bible reading, a class you teach, prayer at the dinner table. Pick one. And this week, stop trying to perform it. Ask the Lord plainly, give me delight in this thing. Treat the lack of joy as a problem to bring to the throne, not a personal failing to white-knuckle through. Number 3. Memorize the sentence. God is most glorified in us when we are most satisfied in Him. Say it in the shop. Say it in the truck. Say it over your coffee. Let it work on you the way water works on stone. 6 months from now, that sentence will have changed you whether you notice the change or not. You can pick up the collected works of John Piper, Volume 2 at Crossway, Westminster, or Amazon, links in the show notes. And if the full volume is out of reach this month, search Desiring God on Hoopla and check it out with your library card. The audio is often available for free, and your morning commute is the perfect chapel for it. If this episode helped you, share it with the one believer in your life who is running on fumes. They are out there. They are tired, and they need to know there is a different tank to run on. Until next time, God is most glorified in us when we are most satisfied in Him. Soli Deo Gloria.